Hi there, this is Phil Simborg, USBGF Teaching Pro, and I was getting ready to do a very short video on a fairly looked like a fairly simple endgame position, and the more I got into it, the more complicated it got and had all kinds of ramifications that I decided that this would make an excellent primer for advanced players on the cube and on endgame cubes. And to make sure I got it right and explained it right, I brought on Stick to help me, one of the top players in the world, currently ranked number 7 giant. He's also my teaching partner. We do a lot of teaching together, and we have a group that does teaching, and a lot of the lesson plans that I have are a result of a lot of things that I've learned from Stick. So together we put together this video, which I think would be a very, very excellent help for any player who we call it Cube 102, doubling Cube 102, because we don't intend to spend a lot of time teaching basics. If you don't really already know the basics of the cube and match equities and take points, we're not going to get into that here. We're going to assume you know that and you're a more advanced player. So let's get right into it. The position that I had in mind, that I started with, that was causing me some problems and grief to explain, and I'm going to start out with the basic position. Red is on roll here, and the question is cube action, first of all for a money game, and then I wanted to see how the cube action changed for match play at different scores, and I found out it's all over the place as far as whether or not red should double, whether or not blue should take, whether or not blue has a redouble coming back at you. So it's all a function of really two things. It's a function of what are the odds of winning for red, what are the odds of winning for blue if red misses, and how do you use the doubling cube based on take points and match equity at different scores. So as usual, we start out in a money game, and I want to give you just a brief overview of the take points that we're going to be applying at these various scores and situations, and then I'm going to turn it over to Stick to actually do the dirty work and the heavy lifting. But in a money game, as you all know, your take point is 25%, and that's the dead cube take point, assuming that you never get in a recube. Well, with a lot of study, John O'Hagan and I and others have come up with the concept that you have recube vig of about 3.5% in a race. If it's a long enough race, your real take point is really about 21.5, and that the less chance you have to give the recube back, and on the last roll of the game or on a dead cube, you're going to use 25. In this position, you don't have a lot of opportunity to give a recube back. Blue will absolutely have a recube. We all know that. If red misses, we know when you look at the odds, and we'll talk about that blue is going to redouble and red will have a take. So there is pretty good recube vig here, but it's not going to be down to 20%, which is what Extreme Gammon shows would be the bottom number. It's going to be somewhere in between 20 and 25%. Where that is, I'm going to let Stick tell us how he comes up with that and how he determines that. But that's the range. Now for match play, it becomes much more complex than that. So what I've done for my students and for myself is I've come up with a chart that helps me, and I'm going to use a different chart. I'm going to use the one that shows the dead cube take points as well as the take points. I've come up with my own chart, and my own chart basically shows at different match scores from 5 away, and down, and I have charts for 9 away, and others. I show what the average live cube take point would be in a race. And you really can't apply this very well if there's lots of gammons, because the recube vig changes quite a bit with gammons. And you can't apply this very well if it's on the last roll of the game. On the last roll of the game, you have to use the dead cube take point. And again, in end games where you have some chance to recube but not a lot, you're going to get closer to the dead cube. So that's why you really need to know your take points for both the trailer and the doubler. And these are pretty much the numbers that I use. Now, the dead cube numbers are derived, as you know, by using risk over risk plus reward, and by using the latest match equity tables that we have from Neil Kazaros and coming up with these numbers. The live cube are just, we figure out based on using about 68% of the difference between dead and live. And they're, again, very, very good if it's a pure race with 60 pips or more to go. But they really break down and you have to do some interpolations. It's not my goal today to teach you the whole approach, but I just wanted you to see the take points that we're using at the different match scores. And then if we have time at the end, we might talk about how you apply this position when you have lopsided scores like 9 away, 2 away, and 8 away, 3 away, where the recube vig might be very, very high. And that's one reason why you may not double, or it might be an easy take at those scores. So this is your basic overview. Stick, is there anything you want to correct or add to what I just said?
No, other than just make sure you learn this at home before you go to the tournament.
Yeah, and by the way, I have a copy of this in my iPhone, so I can cheat while I'm playing. I can say, oh, I want to take a picture, and then I pull this up and I cheat and I see my take point. Or I say, excuse me, while I go to the bathroom, and I can cheat and do that. Of course, I'm kidding. I don't cheat, but you should ask people to leave their iPhone at the table when they go to the bathroom, or go to the bathroom with them. I can't tell you how many times I go to the bathroom where my opponent seems to have to go with me. So the point is, the reason I have it in my iPhone, I carry it with me, is to have it memorized. By now I've got it memorized. I can tell you every number here, and well, most of my students can. And if I can't tell you the numbers, I can usually come pretty close and figure it out. So when we get to a position like the one on the board, the first step before you even start thinking about whether or not you're going to double or take is you better know your opponent's take point, because at some scores, if his take point is 40%, or in other scores where his take point is 8%, that's going to make a big difference as far as whether you're doubling or not and whether you're taking or not. So the next step after you know the take point and figure that out and think about recube vig, whether or not he's recubing or not, and how much recube vig and how much that affects the take point, is to just know the damn odds. What chance do you have if you're red of winning here? It doesn't take brain surgery to see that red is favored here, but how many times will red miss in this position? I'm going to pause for 1 second and ask you to tell me, or ask yourself, how often out of 36 rolls will red miss here? Okay. You can pause this recording if you need more time, but you should have come up with 13 rolls, and it should have been very, very easy. There's 11 ones where he's going to miss, plus a 3-2. And it's not always so easy. You can have a lot more complicated positions, but it's real easy to check it. Go to Analyze, Dice Distribution, and here are all the bad rolls that the roll-around roll has. And if you count them up, you'll see that there's 13 of them, and you'll see every one with a 1 in it, plus 3-2, misses. And every other one makes it. And if you want to figure out how often after red misses, blue will win, you can do the same thing. Count the rolls that miss, and then check it. Put blue on roll and count dice distribution. So knowing the odds is going to be the next thing after that. And then you have to decide whether or not you should double, whether or not you should redouble if you're holding the cube, because you often have a redouble in these positions, an initial redouble. And then after you've solved it for a money game or unlimited game, start putting in all the different scores from 7 away, 7 away, or 5 away. We're going to focus on 5 away today to start with, and decide whether or not you should double and whether or not you should take. And with that, that's why I brought in Stick, because he can do this far quicker and better and more accurately than I can. So Stick, take it away.
All right. So, like Phil said, you need to know all your take points and have learned them at home to be able to use them here. When you start a game, the first thing you should be taking is, one of the first things you should know is what your take point is, so you think about it the entire time. You don't get to a position like this and just be totally lost and waste your own clock time. So he's got it for an unlimited game here. The first thing I would figure out is how often the player on roll wins, which Phil started to do for you right there. He gave you that we basically get off 23 out of 36 rolls, which in itself is about 64%. Now, to figure out how much you win overall, you have to do kind of a two-part equation. From the viewpoint of the taker, for you to win, what has to happen is red has to roll one of his 13 bad rolls that we looked at in the dice distribution, and then you have to roll one of your 23 good rolls, because you have 13 numbers that also miss. So figuring out the overall percentage for for blue would mean you need 13 out of 36 times 23 out of 36. These may seem like big numbers to some of you. Hopefully you've used a lot of backgammon numbers before. Everyone in the backgammon world knows that 36 times 36 is 1296 anymore, so that part of it's easy. And then you can do 13 times 23, hopefully in your head. If not, you need to work with some math at home some more. I promise you it gets very easy once you've worked at it some more. Again, like I always tell people.
Well, let me just jump in. 13 out of 36. I know that 12 out of 36 is exactly 33%. That's a no-brainer. And I know that every single 1 out of 36 is 2.778% or 2.78%. So it's real easy. You take 33% and add 2.78%, and you can get there. It's just by interpolating. It isn't high math to get there.
Yep.
Okay.
So 13 out of 36 times 23 out of 36. That's going to give you 299 out of 1296. Again, they sound like big numbers. If you were just estimating how often that is there and you were a backgammon player, again, you would know that 324 out of 1296 is exactly 1 out of 4 games. That's the dead cube take point. How many games you would need to win if it was a dead cube would be 324. So you know 299 out of 1296 is slightly less than that. So you could make an educated guess without actually doing the math. You should be able to do the math though, and if you do the math, you're going to see that that's 23%.
Let me hit the button.
Yeah, red on roll here should be winning 77%, and yeah, blue should be winning 23%. So that's the information going in. You shouldn't have any questions about how much someone wins here. So when you're going to apply it, obviously, to money or to a score, we're near a last roll situation. So you're almost always going to have a cube for the player on roll, unless you get some wildly obscure skewed score. The scores we're going to look at today, they're probably all going to be cubes, just because we are near a last roll position, and then the takes and the recube takes will be interesting. Any questions yet, Phil, that you think I missed?
No, let me just add that stick turns out to be right, and this shows you that it's a 43% error not to double here. You're going to come out way ahead by doubling, and it shows that it's a 12% error if you were to pass. And of course, another reason why it's very important to double here is I promise you many people will pass this, so you'll get a 12% error a lot of the time when they pass. So Woolsey's law, which says ask if your opponent will take or drop, and are you sure, you should get this right that you would take, but then you still should come up with a double because of market loser theory. You're going to lose your market every time you take both checkers off. Okay.
Yeah. So do you want to go in on the scores now?
Okay. Where do you want to start? 5 away, 5 away? Come down?
Sure, we can start wherever, yes.
All right. 5 away, 5 away. Go ahead, Stick. It's all yours.
So, like Phil said, you should know going in, you should know your take points from study at home. It just makes things a lot easier. In backgammon, there are so many things you need to know. It's just so many details you need to accumulate over the years, and that's why it takes a long time for anyone to become a great backgammon player. There are all these little things you need to learn, and you just can't learn them overnight. So one thing are the take points, which at these scores you'll need to know the take points. Now, 5 away, it's 20%, so it's basically close to what we were looking for at money. In this position in particular, we're going to have a decent amount of recube big, because every time he misses, we get to recube. That's why, even though we only won 23%, like we just saw for money, and Phil said our take point probably hovered somewhere between 20 and 25%, you know, our fully live and our fully dead cube take point, it was still a clear take, because every time we get a turn here as blue, we get to redouble. So we always get that redouble in when it gets to be our turn. So that makes it closer to that 21.5%, 22% that Phil spoke of with recube bid. So knowing that the take point here is 20% and that it's near a last roll situation, that our opponent only wins 23%, it's pretty easy to know that this is a cube at 5 away, 5 away.
Okay, now let me ask you a question. If red has the cube and he doubles blue and he misses, now the question is, should blue redouble, and does red have a take on the redouble, and how do you know that?
Yeah. So from our beginning position, the nice part for red is that even when he misses, every time he misses, he is going to be off the turn after that no matter what. There's no little combos, 2-1, 2-1 combos where he's ever going to miss. So basically he's always off if it comes back to him. So blue is going to recube here. Now, I personally don't have the recube take points memorized. I will tell you that honestly.
Well, I'll tell you.
Figure them out.
This is something that I've got that Stick doesn't have.
Yeah.
At 5-away, 5-away, the recube take point is 25%. At 4-away, 4-away, the recube is 33%. And at 3-away, 3-away, it's 25%. So 25, 33, 25 makes it very easy for me to remember. Now, when you get to 4-away, 3-away, and 3-away, 2-away, that's where you have to do a little bit of work. But I've got those as well on my chart. And if you scroll down, you'll see at 5-away, 5-away, the recube take point is 25%. At 4-away, 4-away, 33, and at 3-away, 3-away, 25. So I've also worked on 4-away, 5-away, and 3-away, 4-away, just so I can make sure I understand them. And at 3-away, 4-away, anytime you go to double match point, I know that my take point on is always going to be the same as what my equity would be if I were to drop. So if you're at 3-away, 4-away, and you go to a 4 cube, if you were to pass this cube and you were the trailer, you would have 19% winning chances. Actually, it's more like 18.5 according to the latest take point, according to the latest match equity chart. So as long as you could win more than you're better off taking than dropping if you can win more than your match equity if you drop. So it's an easy one to remember. And the same thing is true the other way. If you're the leader and you drop, you would be losing. 3-away, 2-away, and at 3-away, 2-away, I just remember you have 40%. So these become easy for me, but again, this is in my iPhone, I've studied it, and I believe just about every one of my students now is smarter than Stick when it comes to these recubes, because I've made them all learn these numbers. Now, Stick doesn't have to be that smart, because like he said, he can figure it out over the board, but I'm going to save about 6 seconds on the clock over Stick in these positions, because I know I'm cold. Okay, so back to 5-away, 5-away. The recube take point is 25%, and the way you get that is by doing risk over risk plus reward. And coming up with those numbers. You'll come up with those numbers that way. So, in order for Red to take this recube, he has to have 25%. Does he? Think about it. Does he? Figure it out. Stick already told you that there are 13 misses here. What percentage is 13 misses? Well, 12 misses is 33%. It's a no-brainer. Has to be a take. Huge take. He's got more than 33%. He's got 36%, and he only needs 25% to take. So it's going to be a redouble and a take at 5-away, 5-away. But again, knowing the odds and knowing the take point are the two things you have to get this right. It's not brain surgery once you know those two numbers. Okay.
So before we leave the cube there for a sec,
Sure.
before we go on, I want to mention one thing because I think it might even be wrong on your chart. So we're looking at this position here. What we're looking for is a dead cube take point for Red. I think the quoted 25% are live cube take points.
Oh, you're right. Gosh.
Because I just did the math in my head, and I feel like 29% is the take point for Red here, the dead cube take point. It's still going to be a huge take in the panel, obviously, because there's a huge difference in win percentages. But we're risking 19% to gain 49%, and that should come out to about 29% as the dead cube take point.
And this is but this is why Stick is number 7 and I'm 62, because if this had been a position where you had 27 or 28%, Stick would have correctly dropped and I would have incorrectly taken because I was using the 25%, which is the live cube take point, instead of the true dead cube take point that Stick is talking about, which is closer to 29%. And I don't have the dead cube take points for the recube. And that's a mistake. I need to add those because it's often going to be a dead cube take point. So these numbers, all these numbers are the same. Dead and alive are the same at all these scores where you get to double match point. But at 5-away, 5-away, this is a live cube number because the cube is not dead on a recube at 5-away, 5-away to 4. in most positions. In this position, stick's right. It's dead, so you have to know the dead cube take point. And if I thought a little bit longer and I was smart enough, I would know to use a higher number. And usually at these scores, the difference between the dead cube and the live cube take point is at least 5%, and sometimes as high as 8 or 9%. Okay, so you solved that problem, but it's still a big take. I was lucky to make a mistake in the right direction. Okay, let's go back to the original position and see if there's any difference at 5 away, 5 away if it's a recube. So how do you approach this, Stick?
Okay, so 5 away, 5 away, we need to know, again, like Phil said, the most important thing over there is the live cube recube, because we're going to get, again, as blue, we'll get in a recube when it comes to our turn. And the live cube take point, he already said, is about 25%. And we've already given all the data over there for everything you should need to know. So you should be able to think about this and get it pretty quickly.
Okay, so I need, if I'm blue, I need 25% to take this cube on a recube. And we already figured out and saw the numbers before that I only have 23%. However, that 23% is a cubeless number. It's assuming that I don't get in a recube. And here, if I get the cube on 4, I could get in a recube. So I'm a little confused, Stick. You got to explain this to me. Why is it? I know I win this 23%, and that tells me it's a pass. Why doesn't the recube make it into a take? Or does it?
It's just the basic math of figuring it, of the risk versus the reward. Again, if you figure out the dead cube take point, I don't know if you want to show people how to do that right now in case they don't know how to do it. You want to draw it up in a little window and I can walk through it?
Sure.
And this is just to figure out. You could just do it in XG on the side panel there so they can look at the position if you want, or whatever. It doesn't matter.
Here's a piece of paper.
Yeah, but it's to figure out a dead cube take point, and then so 5 away, 5 away.
If you just drop, you are 3 away, 5 away.
5 away. Write it. You're always going to want to write this from the point of view of the person taking or dropping. So if you drop, it's going to be 5 away, 3 away, because you're going to need to know what percentage you are. And so 5 away, 3 away is 35% match equity. And if it goes double take and you lose, as the person, again, looking from the taker's point of view, it's going to go to 5 away, 1 away Crawford.
16.5?
16%. Yeah,
16.
Yeah, you use your own rounding how much you know the table or not. Usually I don't work with halves a lot unless it's really important because they make the math a little tougher.
Okay.
So that's 16% match equity. And if it goes double take and win, obviously you're the other side of that 5 away, 1 away coin. So you're 1 away, 5 away Crawford, and you'll be 84%. And as Phil said earlier, the formula for figuring out your dead cube take point is risk divided by risk plus gain, or risk plus reward is fine. So here we would be, the risk is going to be 19%, the difference between 35 and 16. And the gain is going to be 49%. It's going to be the difference between 84 and 35. So you would plug those numbers in. It would be 19 divided by 19 plus 49, or 19 divided by 68 overall. And that's going to give you 29%, roughly. Again, that's a dead cube take point. That's the important thing to remember. It's the dead cube take point. It's without figuring in recube big. And if we had a position with gammons in it, obviously wouldn't be figuring in gammons. Phil already told you in general for unlimited or money games, the cube is worth about 3.5%. So if you were just estimating how much a cube is going to be worth, you can use that ballpark number as long as it's a normal score. So it's not a surprise at 5 away, 5 away that our live cube take point is about 25%, because it drops down that 4% for owning the cube and be able to recube when it comes our turn. But that's just not enough to take them in the position we're looking at.
Okay,
so 23%.
So you don't calculate the 25% over the board. You just know that at 5 away, your VIG is around 3.5% or 4%, something in that range.
Yeah.
Okay.
Usually for cube vig, for all the scores, you can look at your opponent's upcoming take point and have an idea of whether you have more or less than at an unlimited game.
So the bottom line is the 25% live cube take point that I have on my chart for 5 away pretty well applies on a recube, and since you only have 23%, blue would have to pass here. And Stick is right. So here's a position where blue would not take the redouble, but he would take the initial double. And by the way, it's a huge blunder to drop the initial double, and it's a pretty big blunder to take the redouble. Do we now see why you have to know these numbers, even if you're smart enough? And most of us are, and even people who haven't played much backgammon could easily figure out the odds here. Anybody who's taken a class in math or can figure out any basic statistics could have figured out the odds of winning here. But unless you understand the take points for the initial double and the redouble, you have no chance of getting these positions right. And when the score is 5 away and less, the match is on the line. If you make a mistake here and take a 4 cube and make a huge blunder, you're going to lose this match most of the time. 84% of the time you're going to lose it. So that's why it's really, really critical to understand and know your take points, your match equity, and how to apply it in this very, very simple position. And that's why I picked this simple position, because in another video or at another time, we're going to be dealing with situations where there's gammons involved and all kinds of recube ramifications and different cube vigs, different score, and it can get much more complicated than this. This is one of the simplest ones to do this, and many, many people will get this wrong. Okay, Stick, let's take a look at some other scores. We had 5 away. Is this going to change? Let's stay with the even scores first of all. At 4 away, both the initial cube and the recube. I'm going to stop just a second. Actually, I shouldn't. I'll let anybody watching this video can go down to the bottom of your screen and pause it and take as long as you want to think about 4 away. Do you know what your take point is on the initial double and on the redouble? Well, if you don't, now you know what you don't know. It's nice to have somebody tell you what you don't know so that you can go out and learn it. But the 4 away, you need to know both of those numbers, and I'll be able to apply that for both the cube and a redouble. And then, of course, if it's an initial cube from red to blue, blue's redouble to red again. So first of all, let's stay with the initial cube. I have at 4 away a live cube take point that I use of about 22% for the initial cube. And since it shows that the take point, we know that he wins 23%, according to my book, you take this cube and it's a double. Is that correct, Stick?
Sounds good to me.
And it is a double and a take. And by the way, you would think that if my take point is right at 22% and he only has 23%, that it would only be a small take. What makes this a bigger take is the fact that he's going to have a pretty incredible recube if he takes the cube. Now let's look at that. Let's say that blue does take, as he should, and let's say that red misses and blue's on roll. Again, audience, what do you think is the cube action here? Should blue redouble? Does red have a take or pass? Well, if you were listening earlier, I told you my little trick, 25, 33, 25. The recube take point here on a recube for red is 33%. What do you think? Does he have a take or pass? Does he have 33% here? And why is this getting in my way here? He has 36%. He has a take. Lots of people would drop this cube. And again, they would be making a 17% error, and the only way you would know that this is a take is if you knew that this is a 36% winning odds and you knew that your take point was 33%. Let's go back to the original position, and now let's look at a redouble on the initial position for red. Stick, do you want to take us through this?
The redouble is basically what Phil kind of just went over. Anytime you're recubing for the match, for both players. In other words, here, if he takes, it's going to be for the match. So his take point is going to be the same as if he dropped, in case you don't already know the take points already. So if he drops, it's going to be 4-away, 2-away, which is 67-33 is the breakdown. So his take point is going to be that 33% that Phil just mentioned.
Yeah, his take point is the same as his match equity if he drops.
Right.
Yeah.
If he drops, yeah.
Okay.
So, like we did in the beginning, all we would need to do is figure out how often red is going to, red wins here. And we've already figured that out, that red wins 64% immediately, or that red wins 77% overall. So knowing that, we would be able to, if he only wins, blues only winning 23% from here, probably no bueno.
Yeah.
By a large margin.
Sure. He's winning 23%. His take point's 33%. Huge pass.
Yeah.
Huge pass. And by the way, we haven't talked a lot about whether or not you double, because it's a no-brainer in these positions to double. But again, market loser theory is mainly telling you when you double. You should always double when you think your opponent has a pass, because you have nothing to gain by playing on, unless you're too good to double and you can win too many gammons, and that's not going to be the case when you have checkers off. The only question of when you double or not is when you know he has a take, and there you double if you have too many market losers. And in a one-roll position, you double. If the score is even, you would double in a one-roll position. If the game's going to end on the next roll, you double if you're even a 1% favorite. If you have 51%, is when your doubling window opens at an even score. You'd rather play for twice as much when you have 51% than if you don't. It's that simple. This is not a one-roll position, but it's going to be close to that, and it's going to be closer to that. And by just using your head, most players can come to the conclusion that these are big doubles. Okay, so we've covered 4-away, 4-away. Do you have something to add, Stick?
Yeah, I was just going to add to that. There is a way to figure out when your window opens. I don't find it very useful at all. I know how to do it, especially because I've done it at home a lot. I almost never do it over the board. I can't even remember the last time I did it over the board. You guys read John O'Hagan's stuff. He does it sometimes on the forums, on my forums if you look at them. But it is basically the same formula. It's risk divided by risk plus gain, where you would go no double and lose equity. The double and lose equity, that would be your risk. And then the no double and win, and the double and win equity, that would be your gain. And then you'd input that for the risk and risk plus gain, and that would tell you when your window opens if it were a last roll situation, and then you can extrapolate from there and figure it out if you want. But honestly, what Phil said is that if you have some common sense, you should be able to do it over the board. I rarely, if ever, use that formula, but I think it is worth knowing, but I don't use it.
Well, I'll tell you what's worth knowing. The formula is too complicated for me, and I'm not able to do it over the board. I'm getting better and better at math. I've read The Secrets of Mental Math by Art Benjamin to help me with my math, and I recommend it to everybody. And he autographed a copy and got mad at me when I didn't read it the first time or didn't fully understand it. So I've read it like 3 times now, and I still can't do all this stuff over the board, especially with the clock running. And I ignored doubling windows my entire life until 2 years ago, when I got into a big trouble when I didn't know it. So there's a couple of scores where the doubling window is down around 35 and 39% when you're losing 4-away, 5-away, and 4-away, 3-away, and at some other scores with recubes. So I've simply learned where those scores are. Those 2 or 3 scores where your doubling window opens very, very low, where you would have a redouble even if you're only going to win 35% of the time. But most other scores, I know I have to have enough market losers, and I can usually get the recube in right because of market losers and not worry about the technical doubling window area. So I'm with Stick. I don't study market the doubling window, but because I've made such a huge blunder in a big match by not knowing it in one position, it hit me over the head that at those scores I've got a very, very low doubling window. So it helps to know what those scores are. We're not dealing with those scores right now, but again, common sense is going to tell us if he's got trouble taking, I better be doubling. So that's a very, very good approach right there. Okay, so we've done 5-away, 5-away, 4-away, 4-away. Let's go to 3-away, 3-away, the initial cube. Well, again, we still know what the odds are here. We still know blue wins 23%, and according to my take point chart, I use 25% as my live cube take point for 3-away, 3-away. Let's see how good my chart is. It says it's a pass. My 25% worked as my live cube take point. And again, that's the live cube take point that I have memorized by looking at, well, I'll show you. We go to Analyze, Cube Information, and Xavier in Extreme Gammon has put that the live cube take point can go as low as 22.65 or as high as 30.17 at 3-away, 3-away. And what John and I did to come up with our numbers is we subtracted 22 from 30, we multiplied times 68%, and we subtracted that from 30 so that we had a live cube number that came out to almost exactly 25%. And by the way, the next version of Extreme Gammon, a totally new version, which won't be out until about 2015, Xavier tells me he's going to have another column in here. The middle column is going to have estimated or average live cube take point or effective live cube take point, and those are the numbers that I'm giving you on that chart. And those numbers, he agrees, are very, very good for a longer race, and we all agree that it gets very, very tough when you get towards the end and when you get into gammon situations. And I have a special course that I teach just on how to figure cube vig in those kinds of situations and how to adjust. And it's another subject because we're not involved with that right now. So using the chart, I know that this was a pass. What about a recube? Again, I told you earlier, I told you the recube take points, 25, 33, 25. It's real easy. Your take point on the recube at 3-away, 3-away for the live cube is pretty much the same as it is on the initial cube. It's 25%. Has to be a pass. No brainer. So either way, this is going to be a pass. Now we get into the 2-away, 2-away. Most of you, you're advanced players, and you should know that if you got to this position, you both probably were screwed up horribly. You should never get to 2-away, 2-away and get down this far without the cube being turned, because you should be turning the cube when you're a 1% favorite, and even sometimes when you're only a 1% underdog, you might even be right to turn the cube. So it should never get this far. We all know what the take point is here. It's 32%. And the reason it's 32% is because you would get to double match point, and that's what your equity is. I think it's actually 32.32. So this has got to be a big pass at 2-away, 2-away. It's a no-brainer, and you shouldn't get here. That's why I'd like to see a rule change. I'd like to see 2-away, 2-away become Crawford. Then you get to a lot more complicated end games, but I can understand why people won't like that. It takes too long to finish a match. But it would be a better match. Okay, let's get back to some other scores. Let's start with 5-away, 4-away, where you are. It's pretty easy to understand if you're trailing in the score. If you're going to double this at 5-away, 5-away, 4-away, 4-away, and 3-away, 3-away, it's pretty much of a no-brainer that every score where you're losing, you would be doubling. Is that a correct statement, Stick?
In general, I would not apply that broad stroke. We're talking about the center cube too, right?
Okay. Yeah, center cube.
And also, you want 5-away, 4-away as a score. You still have 5-away, 5-away.
Okay, but if you're trailing and your opponent's winning, at most scores, all of us generally think, and I know I made an erroneous statement on purpose. I was baiting Stick, and he wouldn't fall for the bait. I couldn't get him to say it. There's lots of scores where you're losing, where you are wrong to give the cube just because you're behind, even if you would give the cube when you're even, because it's all about risk and reward. Sometimes you're giving the cube, and if he takes it and he wins the entire match, and it's just not worth it. There are scores you'll see that the trailer's take point is going to be higher than the leader's take point for that very reason, because the leader gains so much equity by either winning the match or getting to Crawford or something else. So it isn't necessarily true. You can't make an assumption that you always double faster when you're losing. You have to learn the game and do the numbers. Okay, so what about the numbers here?
Yeah, the 4-away player does have a low take point here. So a lower take point than we've been looking at. So just by that alone, we know that he's going to have a take, because most of the take points have been around 22%. So if take point is lower and we still know he wins 23%, it's going to be an easy take.
Yeah. Why does the player who's 4-away have an easy take? Because if he wins 2 points here, his equity in this match gains tremendously, and if he loses 2 points, he's not losing by that much. He has more to gain than he has to lose, and that's why I use 18% for the leader as his live cube take point. Now, you and I, we all know that this is a 23% position, so with an 18% take point, it's a no-brainer. It's got to be a take. Reverse the score. Reverse the score. Now, red is the one who is 4 away, and the opponent is 5 away. Well, I'll tell you a little secret. My live cube take point here is 24% for the player who's 5 away. His take point, this is one of those examples where his take point is much higher. Well, if he wins the game 23% of the time, and his take point is 24%, it becomes a pass. This is totally counterintuitive to what most people think would happen. Most people think that the farther you're behind, the more desperate you are, and the more likely you are to take cubes, and vice versa. The more you're ahead, the more likely you are to drop. In this position, it's exactly backwards because of the match equities involved. Now, this is a very small pass, and part of the reason is my 24% is a rounded off number, and there is cube vig here, so it gets closer. But again, by just knowing the numbers on that little sheet, and by the way, you have this video, and that you now have access to my numbers. Just all you have to do is copy this right here. But you paid for this video. Send me an email, and I'll be happy to send you this document. pjsimborg@gmail.com, and I'll be happy to send you this document, and also the one that has the dead cubes with the dead cubes on it as well. In fact, I'll send you this one because it's more complete. And I'll also explain a little bit later what these asterisks mean and what the red means. Well, I probably should do it real quick right now. The red tells me that at these scores, if you're trailing, these take points are way off. If you're these are good take points in a racing situation, but if you're trailing and there is many gammons involved, you can recube and get rid of the gammons, and therefore these take points might be much, much lower if you're the trailer at these scores in red. So that's all that means. But these take points are still good in a race where there's no gammons. The asterisk tells me that at these scores, I'm going to play pretty much like gammon go and gammon save. As far as, for example, with a 4-1, you're slotting or splitting, just like gammon go or gammon save, where you have the asterisk. And most of your opening rolls. Not all of them, but it's pretty darn close. And we all know that gammon go and gammon save at 4 away, 2 away, you would play gammon, like gammon go and gammon save. But most people don't realize that you would also do it at 4 away, 3 away. And by the way, these are new. This is based on the latest rollouts and the latest opening book. It didn't used to be that way. We didn't always slot with 4-1. When you were at gammon go at these scores, or when you were trailing at these scores. So that's what the newest rollouts have shown us, and that's what these mean. And I will again send you this. I think you'll find this is an incredibly helpful tool that has proven to be very accurate. And John O'Hagan says he would never use this because he's going to figure it out over the board. And so I challenged John. We took a whole bunch of positions where he figured it out over the board. And after 3 minutes, when he got through figuring it out, he usually came within 1% of my numbers. So those numbers are pretty good. Okay, let's get back to our position. And here again, we saw at 5 away, 4 away, it was exactly the opposite of what you might normally think. Let's take a look at 3 away, 5 away. And you notice I keep my away scores because that's all that really matters. And Stick was the one that really taught me to do this, to make sure I always think in terms of away score. As a matter of fact, when I keep the score in an actual live match, when I'm playing in a tournament, I'm writing down the away score. Some people think that's doing a calculation, but most of the tournament directors have allowed me to do it and agreed that all I am doing is keeping score that way. So here it's 3 away, 5 away, and you are the leader. Should you double? And if you're the trailer, should you take or pass? Well, again, this isn't brain surgery. If you know your take point, and if you know that blue wins 23%, you'll know whether or not this is a take or not. And at this score, at 3 away, 5 away, Stick, do you want to take a shot at it?
Sure. It's 21% should be your take point.
The trailer's take point, it's exactly what I have, is 21%. He wins 23%, has to be a take.
Easy take. Yep.
Easy take. What about the recube?
So we are recubing as 5 away here. We're recubing 3 away.
Yeah, we got to take off a check.
Dead cube. Yeah.
Yeah.
So 5 away. Let's see. It's going to take me a sec to think if that's allowed.
Sure.
I mean, it feels like a huge drop just from knowing, but no, maybe it's not.
Okay. If you look at my sheet, first of all, you're going to.
Yeah, but
go ahead.
Yeah, it's not. Yeah, it is a dead cube take point again. That's why I wasn't sure if it was on your sheet or not before, and wanted to. Yeah, it is a dead cube take point. Sorry, because he's not. Yeah, so it's 33% again.
Very good, and we know.
Yeah.
We know that red wins this game 36%.
And he wins at 36. Yeah.
So it's got to be.
Yeah, it's still the redouble and the take.
Got to be a redouble and a take. So, again, we found one of the few positions out of 1,000 that I would have gotten the right answer faster than Stick. He was still got the right answer.
The nice part about all these is people should do these at home. When you get done with this, you should run through them again until you have no problems remembering the match equities. You have no issues with the recubes, and you can do all the formulas at home. And it's very important to be able to do it at home when you're allowed to use a calculator if you need, or double check and verify stuff, so that when you get to over the board, you don't sit there and spend an hour trying to figure it out, and you don't mess up the numbers over the board. So this is a really great exercise. I do this too with early game blitzes and just figuring out at any different score. Barrels like this, you figure them out at any different score, you see how the cube affects the position. It's a really good exercise to do for all the scores, and you get a much better understanding of the scores. So it is a great exercise.
And I'm going to tell you something else, and Stick said it earlier, and I learned it from Stick. I don't start a game without asking myself, what are the take points? And every single time I take a cube, I instantly ask myself, what are the recube take points? And if I don't know, if I'm at home, I cheat. I look at my sheet. If I'm at home, and by the way, I don't play online. You won't see me play online unless I'm playing a student. And when I play online, I don't cheat because that's not honest. But if I'm practicing against Extreme Gammon and the score is 9 away, 4 away, before I start the game, I ask myself, what's the take point at 9 away, 4 away? And if I can't remember or figure it out, I'm going to immediately look at the sheet. And if I do that every time, in no time at all, I know every one of those numbers. And if I asked you, you need to know every one of the numbers on this sheet. And if I asked you to just memorize these numbers and make up flashcards, you would go nuts trying to do this. But if you do it game by game and think about the logic of what's going on at this score, and think about why it's higher or lower on each side for each score, and even make up a little story about it, eventually you'll have these all memorized, and this as well, the recube take points all memorized. Then when you're done with that, I have a student that has them memorized up to 21. And he's a worse player than me, but he's good at memorizing. And I don't have him memorized at 21. I think he may be the only one in the world that has him memorized all the take points of every score from 0 to 21. Now, I guarantee you that Stick and I could figure it out in time, and we would over the board. But if you're good at that, that's great. But I think you must have them memorized at 5 away, and down, because when you make a mistake here, you're dead. And I have them memorized for 9 away, and down. Higher than 9 away, I'm using 22.5 as my take point and 0.55 as my gammon value, unless it's a lopsided score, and I'll bet you I'm within 1 or 2% all the time, as long as I do that. And that's good enough for me if it's higher than 9 away. But when I start getting under 9 away, I want to know exactly what they are, and it doesn't take that long to memorize them. Stick, I don't think we need to go through any more scores unless you want to show me something else, or if there's a goofy score. I think we've made the point, and we've given the ammunition for people to teach themselves. And one of my favorite sayings is, you cannot hire someone to practice for you. You have got to do this practice on your own.
I think they have all the information in there. And if there's any questions, they can feel free to email me, or obviously email you if there's something they want clarified or don't understand.
Yeah.
My email's checkmugged@yahoo.com. That's check like CHECK, mugged like you're stealing someone's money. It's a poker term I made up a long time ago. And you can obviously get my email address from the forums. But yeah, if anything's not clear, you want any of the formulas elaborated on for these positions, but you should be able to go through them all now with this type of bear-off position and figure it out. You can also create your own exercise, obviously, and just change the position a little bit, and you'll see it can greatly change the winning percentage, and it makes it maybe tougher to figure out how much you win overall, but it's a good process to do, and you should be able to figure it out, like Phil just did there. Put the right player on roll, Phil, if you're going to hit any magic button.
Sure. In 2 seconds, I know that Red wins this game 19 times and misses 17 times. This is a position you've got to know, because it'll help you play your checkers, and whether or not you in the previous roll you often have a chance of being here or here, and here you win 19 times and here you only win 17 times. So even if this is the position, I know that this is going to be a double for money. Of course, it's a big take because you're more than 50%. You're 53% here. So in a money game, this is a double, and it's just a great reference position to know. By the way, this is a double for money. This is a redouble for money. And this is a worse position for blue and is not a redouble. And this is the Jacobi Paradox. And if you don't understand this immediately, I'm not going to explain it right now, this is why you need to take some lessons from me or Stick to learn about Riku B and how it applies in not only this position, but in much more complicated positions. Because the Jacobi Paradox is not just some crazy thing that happens once in a while. There's lots of positions where, because of the redouble, you're not going to give the cube. Where if he doesn't have a redouble and he has a worse position, you can give the cube. So this class is 102. You should be an advanced player. You should know this stuff. If you don't, you need help. You need to learn. You need to read books, articles, take lessons, get a mentor, and find a way to improve your game. Anything else to add, Stick?
I think that's it.
Okay. Thank you for watching. Thank you for buying this video. We are selling this video, and because we think it's well worth it. And if you didn't buy this video, you would have to take a 1-hour lesson from me or Stick. I'm $60 an hour, and Stick is $75 an hour. So if you paid $25 for this video, consider yourself getting a real big bargain, because together we're $130 an hour. Actually, we should reduce the price together.
Yeah, we should subtract.
We should subtract rather than add. Stick, thank you for doing this video with me. I've done another video with John O'Hagan on how to do EPC that we did over a year ago, and I can't tell you how many we sold. I could look, but it's easily more than 50 or 60 of them. If I give you an honest answer, then John will find out I've been cheating him on the money, so I can't tell you. But we've sold quite a few of them, and it's the best way to learn EPC. So that's another video you might contact me about if you want to learn how to do EPC. And we'll probably do more of these in the future if the public demands them. Thanks again for watching, and goodbye to everyone.